Today we're going to be introduced to chapter 6, which has to do with integers. So today we're learning section 6.1, and it's all about integers and what they are. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define what are integers. So we're going to write integer. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. Or not. I forget how to highlight. Alright, I figured it out. Alright, so an integer. An integer is the set of whole numbers and their opposites. Okay, so for example, an integer could be a positive number. Those are those whole numbers. Whole numbers are positive. So it could be a positive number like 1, 2, 3,000. Those are some examples of positive numbers, whole numbers. Okay, but it also includes their opposites. And opposites are just the negative version of that number. So for example, the opposite of 1 is -1. And what makes it an opposite is that it's the same distance from 0 on the number line. Okay, so I'm going to put that over here. Same distance to 0. So for example, on the number line 1 is 1 space away from 0. -1 is also 1 space away from 0. We're going to be learning more about number lines in our next lesson, but that is what opposites are. Okay, so the opposite of 2 would be -2, and I want you to write the opposite of 3,000. You should be writing down -3,000. So opposites are just the negative version. However, like the opposite of -2 would be +2. So the opposite is not always the negative number. It's just the opposite of whatever you're given. So like if you're given -2, the opposite would be +2, if that makes sense. So your answer is not always going to be negative when you're looking for an opposite. It depends on what number you're given to start. Okay. Integers are not fractions, decimals, or percents. So we're going to make a note of that. Integers are not fractions, decimals, or percents. And we're going to go ahead and highlight that if you have a highlighter, because that is super important. Okay, so integers are just like whole numbers and then the negative whole numbers also. So numbers like 3/4 are not an integer, that's a fraction. Numbers like 0.25, 0 and 25 hundredths, not an integer because it's a decimal. And numbers like 75% are not an integer because that's a percent. Okay, so integers are really just those whole numbers and then the negative versions of those whole numbers also. Integers also include 0. 0 is neither positive nor negative. It's just 0. Okay, 0 is not positive or negative, it's just 0. So the opposite of 0, there really isn't one, it's just 0. Okay. All right, the last part of our lesson, I know that this was super quick, is just going to be like sorting words that were given into whether we think that they're going to be positive or negative numbers. Okay. Because one thing we'll do in this lesson is we will have to write integers given a situation, and that'll make more sense in a minute. So let's go ahead and let's kind of divide our paper in half. Not all the way down, but for the most part. And then let's have this left side be positive. And this right side, let's have that be negative. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that so it sticks out. Because we might want to use these notes when we're working on our big ideas or when we're working later in this chapter and we just forget what a situation would be, whether it's positive or negative, because you will have this on your test. All right, so a positive number. Okay, so these are all going to be answers that would end in a positive number. Over here, we're going to have all the answers that would end in a negative number. So for example, if I say something is a gain, so if I say the Packers got a gain of 5 yards, think to yourself real quick, would that be a positive or negative number? And we should be saying that a gain would be positive. Okay, if they gained 5 yards, they're going forward 5 yards. Okay. What about something that's below sea level? So sea level is 0. So let's make a note of that down at the bottom. Sea level is 0. Okay, what this means is that like the ground, so where the ground is, that's 0. In Colorado, we have like mountains, so that would go up, and that's like a gain of elevation, right? This might be like 5,000 feet up. And what that 5,000 is being compared to is where the ground is. The ground is what we call sea level, that's 0. Then if you're in like an ocean or whatever, you can go under the ground, right, into that water, and that would be below sea level. Okay, so if we've got a situation where it says that we're 50 feet below sea level, and if sea level is 0, that's going to mean we're down here somewhere, so that would be a negative number. Okay. If we're above sea level, so if we're like hiking up a mountain or something, that's going to be a positive number, right? We're a positive amount above sea level. So above sea level would be a positive number. Okay. If a gain is positive, so if we gained 5 yards, what if a team lost 5 yards? Think about they lose 5 yards. Let's say the Bears. You know, as Packers, we don't like the Bears. So the Chicago Bears, they lose 5 yards. Okay. A loss would be negative. This could also be like, I lost $10. You now have negative $10 from when you started, right? Because you lost your $10 bill. So it could be other things other than just football too. Temperature. So let's talk about temperature. So temperature that's above 0 degrees would be a positive number, right? So temperature above 0, that's a positive number. If it's 5 degrees out, it's still above 0. It's still a positive number. Okay, but what about if it's like -5 out, right? That's below 0. So when we're given a temperature and we say it's 5 degrees below 0, that means it's -5 degrees outside. You may have heard that, like on the weather forecast, saying that it's 3 degrees below 0. It just means that it's -3 degrees out. Okay, let's see. A withdraw. So if you are withdrawing from your savings account, okay, so you go to the bank, you have a savings account. If you're withdrawing, that means you're taking money out. That means in your account, you're taking money out, so that's going to be a negative number. So if you get a situation where you're withdrawing something, you're negative because you're taking it out of your account. However, if you deposit money, deposit means to put in. So like if I got a $50 bill for my grandma for Christmas, and I go and put that in my bank account, that's called a deposit. That's going to be adding money to what I already have in my account, so it's a positive number. Let's see. We have above zero. I think that's pretty much it for here. You might come across other situations, but just think, like, does that outcome have a positive number or a negative number? For example, if you're climbing up a mountain, that's increasing the elevation again, so then that would be positive. So if you're climbing up something, that would be positive, like a mountain. If you're earning money, so like if your neighbor's paying you to mow their lawn, you're earning money. That's going to be a positive amount that you're going to have. The opposite of earning money would be like owing someone money. So like let's say I went out to eat, my friend paid for my meal because I forgot my wallet. I would owe them 20 bucks. That means that technically I have negative $20 because once I get the $20, I have to go pay them. So owing someone money, that would be a negative number. And we're going to talk about comparing negative numbers in our next lesson too. But like the more money that you owe someone, the less money you would technically have. So the greater the negative number, the smaller the value. Or think like temperature. The greater the negative number, if it's negative 30 degrees outside, which it has been in Wisconsin this week, if it's negative 30 degrees outside, that's a lot colder than if it was negative 5 out. Does that make sense? So the more negative a number it is, the smaller the value, the smaller the temperature is. Okay. Like I said, we'll talk about that more in our next lesson. This is pretty much just sums up everything for today. Just remember, integers are whole numbers and they're opposites. So they're not fractions, decimals, or percents. That's a big takeaway from today. They are whole numbers like 1, 2, 4, 5, 25, and then the negative of those whole numbers also.